Hey fam, welcome to Life More Abundantly, the podcast where we talk Black health like we talk everything else, real, out loud, and with love. I'm Dr. Eboni Haynes.
And I'm Dr. Tynisha Camae Drennon.
And we've got a lot to talk about today, so let's get into today's episode.
Let's go.
All right, T, what's up first today?
Well, on April 7th, the day after my birthday, okay. 1940, Booker T. Washington was on a U.S. postage stamp. He's the first Black person to be depicted on a postage stamp back in 1940. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. For those of you who may not be aware, Booker T. Washington was actually born into slavery in Virginia in 1856, and he rose to become one of the most influential Black educators and leaders of his time.
Speaking of education.
Yeah, I'm sure he's rolling over in his grave right now.
Right.
Yeah.
He's the founder of Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, which is now, right? It's Tuskegee
University.
University. Okay. Don't take my Black card for pausing on that one. Tuskegee University.
I won't take it.
And of course, Tuskegee is focused on education, self-determination, economic advancement, and institutional building in Black communities. They're also strong on agriculture.
Right? Big time on agriculture.
Even when they initially began, it was in a agriculture time period, which we need now. And so they were heavy on that to help Black people kind of be able to farm their own land and monetize the fruits, if you will, pun intended, of their labor.
And then also to understand that it was important for them to grow and eat the things that they grew in order to maintain their health, right?
Yeah. Which is something that we're trying to return to now. I see a lot of people having their little gardens, not just in their backyards, but I see even some apartment complexes, like people are growing gardens, like mini gardens on their balconies. And then there is a system I know where you can have like a mini garden indoors now.
Right.
Like there's some type of ecosystem. I'm not fully familiar with it, but part of the reason we have health challenges is because of the poison that's put into our food. So growing our own food and eating our own food obviously increases our health activity or our health ability.
Yeah, definitely growing food that is free of hormones, growing food that's free of
pesticides,
all of that, right? Because we know that those things do have a negative impact on our health. So yeah, we do see a lot more people doing that.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I love about Booker T. Washington is the fact that actually in 1915, he helped launch National Health Improvement Week, which eventually turned into National Negro Health Week. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in our upcoming, community calendar segment. But at that time, Health Improvement Week was something that encouraged Black communities to focus on sanitation, disease prevention, living in healthier homes, and also improving community conditions.
It's interesting that we've gotten away from that. I didn't even know Health Improvement Week was a thing. And so from 1915 to now, we're talking about well over 100 years that this hasn't been not only widely known, but more widely recognized, right? Especially in our communities and our health inequities. I feel like the gap is getting wider instead of smaller since this time period, which is why we do our podcast to bring awareness to health improvement.
Absolutely.
Live life more abundantly.
Live life more abundantly. So yeah, some people might think, oh, well, it was just a stamp, but think about it. For a Black person to be on a stamp was a big deal, really big
Sure.
deal. You know, he then could be seen as like a national symbol for the Black community because postage stamps traveled into every home, every business, every
Absolutely,
community
especially
across the
then.
US.
Right, that's
Right.
how we communicated,
Exactly.
through the
Exactly.
mail.
Exactly. So the mail was significant. Having
The
a
mail
Black
was
person,
significant.
yeah, on a
Exactly. We
piece of
didn't
mail
have
was
email, we
significant.
didn't have cell phones, so we
Mhm.
sent the mail, which is pretty incredible. I know white people was mad.
You know they were. Who is this expletive?
Right. They didn't even
Black
want the
man
mail
on
no
my
more. That
mail.
probably that probably encouraged some of these inventions. It was like, "Forget it. Everybody in their house needs a phone." AT&T Bell South, get it together.
Right, right. So,
Okay.
yes. So, love the fact that Booker T. Washington was the first Black person to be on a US postage stamp.
Absolutely. And so we need to recognize this. Symbolic wins always matter.
Mhm,
We still need to match them with real investment in Black communities, right?
mhm.
Because even as we're talking about that, there have gone on to be several other prominent Black figures who have become stamps. And as a
Right.
community, we're always excited about that. But is the government the only portion that monetizes from that inclusion on a stamp? Like,
I
where
think
are the
so.
residuals? Like,
And they would say, "Well, we're not really monetizing because everybody
yeah.
has to put a stamp on something that's mailed."
But how are we compensated?
Come on
You know.
now. You
So
already
once
know.
again, so once again, I appreciate the
Yes.
shout out, but I also
Mhm.
would appreciate some investment into our communities. Yeah,
Right.
you and I both are AME adjacent. Let me say.
Mhm.
And I remember it was a huge deal when Richard Allen was put on the stamp, and there was
Mhm.
an unveiling and all of the things. But now that I'm thinking
Mhm.
about it, what we get out of it?
Right. So what did the AME church get out of that deal?
So
That's an interesting question. We'll have to find out.
we do. We'll get back to
Yeah.
you.
But I
All right.
suspect we already know the answer.
I think we do.
All right, what else happened this week in Black history?
So April 10th, 1947, Jackie Robinson becomes the first Black player in modern Major League Baseball history, and he still is honored to this day. He was born
Mhm.
in Georgia in 1919, raised in Pasadena, California, and then he became a multi-sport athlete, which is
Mhm.
incredible. He attended UCLA, but I think the fact that he went to UCLA back
At
then,
that period of time, right.
we do not speak about his academic excellence. Back to
Mhm.
education. So he
Mhm.
wasn't just a baseball player, but
That's right.
he excelled academically, and
Mhm.
that is extraordinary in and of itself.
Yeah, because you're not just going to UCLA even at that time just because you could play ball.
Especially at that time.
Right. Right.
Especially at that time, just because you could play ball, because
Mhm.
they weren't monetizing sports, right? And to
Right,
the
no
degree they are
NIL
now like that.
deals.
Right, they was just in there, just playing for sport.
Right.
So
And
that's pretty.
back then, education in our communities was a
Yes,
big deal, right? You were going
absolutely.
to go to school, you were going to excel,
Mhm,
and the
mhm.
community was going to put all of their money and energy behind
They sure
students who
were.
had the
The
aptitude for
ability, yeah,
academics, right? And so we
yes,
see that in movies like Hidden Figures.
yes,
But if you also watch the movie 42, you see that Jackie Robinson is depicted as well-spoken and
absolutely,
carried himself well and with
absolutely.
dignity and was educated. Education we saw back then as being a way of opening doors to other
Mhm,
opportunities where Black people had not been welcome. And so if you were well dressed, if you were well spoken, if you could
mhm,
speak on topics that showed that you had a certain level of education, those things really did change the hearts and minds of many white people who would be happy to keep Black folks out of different industries and universities.
absolutely. And let's not forget that Jackie Robinson was recruited from the Negro League and then still
Mm-hmm.
mistreated in the
That's right.
MLB, right? There were still
Mm-hmm.
many cities where they would boo him, where they would spit on him, where they would call him names, where he couldn't
Mm-hmm.
stay at the same hotel as the team. And so he fought through all of that, right, to set the precedence for so many who have come behind us. And it's interesting. I feel like baseball is slowly becoming one of those sports that African Americans are dominating as well. But, as we know, everything we do.
That's right. We do it right. African Americans, and then South Americans,
Yes.
Cubans, yeah, black folks, people of the diaspora,
That
the
part.
African diaspora are dominating baseball. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when he joined
Mhm.
the Brooklyn Dodgers, he entered, of course, intense scrutiny. We talked about racial hostility, crazy. But it was an emotional, political, and historical feat. He had a platform at the highest level while carrying the
Mhm.
weight of integration, and
Mhm.
he was not quiet about it. He was very outspoken against racial injustice. So he didn't just
Mhm.
break the ceiling per se, but he was an advocate for bringing others with him and for speaking out against racial injustice across the board, which makes
Yeah.
him another hero. Like he didn't just be like, "Well, I got mine, get
Mhm. Good luck.
yours." You're
Mhm.
right. Good luck with that. But he continued to speak out. So it's pretty
Yeah.
phenomenal.
Okay.
He later became a business leader and, of course, civil rights advocate.
Yeah. He was the man.
He was the man.
Yeah, and I'm
Mhm.
sure it was really hard for him to also be the first. I can only imagine the intense pressure that that would have on you. Um,
Absolutely. And then April 15th is also known as Jackie Robinson Day.
mhm. Yeah, that's
So
the
she
day his jersey was retired, I think.
I
Yeah.
think you are
Uh-huh.
right. Jackie Robinson died early. I mean, he was only 53 years old, despite being in great physical health, right? But he had complications from diabetes, which led to heart disease, 2 strokes, he almost went blind, and then,
Mm.
he eventually succumbed, to death from a stroke. And I think a lot of that is also, about the extreme prolonged stress and the racial trauma he faced.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
researchers also agree that all of that, especially breaking the baseball color barrier, contributed to his poor health and early death.
Yeah. And I'm sure the fact that he was a veteran also maybe contributed to it, being Black and in the armed forces in
Mm,
the early 1900s and all of the things that came with that. Yeah.
sure. So, as we talk about Stress Awareness Month, right? Finding better ways to take care of ourselves.
Mhm. All right. Well, we definitely appreciate Jackie Robinson for all of his contributions, not only to baseball, but definitely to the Black community and how he always carried himself with class and dignity. So kudos to his wife, too, and his family, who, despite her being well into her hundreds, still remaining an officer of the Jackie Robinson Foundation and making sure that his legacy lives on.
Absolutely. And as we've talked about frequently, women are not always acknowledged for their contributions, but even to
Mm-hmm.
walk alongside him, um, and their son, I think, died the year before Jackie Robinson died. So Jackie Robinson
Mm-hmm.
Jr. was killed in a car accident. So just the toll that grief takes on the mind and the body, but she still
Yeah.
remains active, keeping his legacy alive. So tell us what's on the community calendar for this week.
So, since we're talking about health, this week is actually National Public Health Week. As a public health professional, I could not let this week go by without us talking about this very important observation that occurs every first full week in April. National Public Health Week highlights how public health improves our daily lives, it protects our families, and it also strengthens our communities. And my major professional organization, the American Public Health Association, or APHA, is the organization that promotes NPHW each year. APHA does a national campaign. It provides resources, materials, and tools for communities to get involved in National Public Health Week. And it also helps people realize that public health is not just having clean air, it's not just having safe neighborhoods, it's not just making sure that we have quality health care. And it's not just transportation safety, but it really is also prevention. It's about having trusted information shared with the community. It's about legislation that makes sure that we can live life more abundantly. So
Wow, that's a lot.
everybody should care about public health, should be advocating for public health funding and encouraging people to go into the field of public health, but also everyone should be celebrating National Public Health Week each year.
Explain a little bit to what when people go in the field of public health, kind of what do they do?
That's a great question. So there is so much to do in public health, and that's actually one of the things that I love about it and one of the reasons why I got into it. So sometimes people think about public health folks as being just maybe public health nurses or public health educators, right? People who are out there educating people on diabetes or heart disease or any number of public health challenges. But you can be a public health professional and you can be working on legislation, right? You can be working for a legislator and helping them to develop bills
Oh, wow.
that advance some health cause. Maybe there are some disparities that are impacting a particular community. And so you might do the research in order to get legislators more interested in a particular issue and why it's important and what some ways that they can address the issue would be. But you can also be an epidemiologist where you are tracking outbreaks. So maybe
Oh,
there is an outbreak in a particular community. So maybe at the state level, you might be working to identify hotspots and then help other public health professionals identify the best way to address those
okay.
issues. You could get into biostatistics where you are collecting data, processing that data, making that data available so that the epidemiologists can do their job better. So students and researchers can do their jobs better. You could work in environmental health. And so you might, want to try to address issues that impact the environment. And so maybe you're addressing issues related to air pollution or maybe even things related to how different products impact the water or the soil. So you can do so much in public health. And guess what? We work very closely with other disciplines. So we work with
Oh,
transportation, we work
okay.
with education, we work with hospitals, we work with everybody because at the
Okay.
end of the day, all of these things are interconnected. So public health really does impact everybody and every discipline.
That's cool. Now I hear that the MPHW has a theme every year.
Yeah,
What's
they
this year's
do.
theme?
This year's theme is Ready, Set, Action. And so the idea is that regardless of where you see yourself, whether you're an individual or whether you are a leader of a community organization or whether you are a scientist or whether you work in government, there are things that you can do to get ready, get set, and then act to address different public health issues. This year, they've identified several action steps that individuals can take in order to promote health in their community. So we'll make sure that we post the National Public Health Week link in our show notes so that you'll see the things that you can do. And some things are just very easy for people to take on, right? There is nothing preventing you from advocating, for example, in organizations that you might be affiliated with, nonprofits or church or sorority fraternity or any other organization that you might be affiliated with. You might be able to suggest some healthier things that they can do, some healthier policies that they can adopt in order for the organization to promote the health of its members.
Thanks so much for the information, Ebony. Next up, we have a lot of things going on this month.
A lot. April is busy.
April is busy. Of course, we already talked about Autism Awareness Month, but it also is National Minority Health Month, which pretty much for our podcast is every month.
Every month, every single week. Yes, that's
But
right.
its roots go back to Black-led public health movement, which we've been talking about with Booker T. Washington. In the early of 20th century, much of the Black population lived in poverty. Were concentrated in the rural South. Formal healthcare was often non-existent, right? And we know
Mhm.
why, because they're coming out of slavery and they just didn't do anything for our people. So we had to
Right.
create our own spaces. And then even when healthcare was available, of course, we're all aware that we were often abused and
Mhm.
violated in healthcare and inappropriately treated. And so we come on this podcast every week to try and dismantle some of the fears that are rooted in reality and, of course, debunk some of the myths. Sanitation also was poor. Nutrition was inadequate, back to where we are
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of housing was substandard.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually wrote a paper on this when I was in seminary as it relates to the history of movements to empower Black people toward better health. And I did spend a lot of time talking about Booker T. Washington and his work
Mm,
with National Health Improvement Week, which later became National Negro Health Week. But interestingly, in 1914, Booker T. Washington was known to have said that without health and until we reduce the high death rate, it'll be impossible for us to have permanent success in business
mm,
and property getting and acquiring
mm.
education or to show other evidence of progress.
Interesting.
Yeah, he was spot on in terms
He
of
was.
his understanding of the link between health and our ability to succeed in other areas of our lives. I'm just really grateful that he had the vision to
Yeah.
establish National Negro Health Week in 1915. And actually, that's the year that he died too. So, like, this was one of his major
Wow.
efforts that he was able to implement before he died in November of 1915. But really, over time, National Negro Health Week has expanded, and through an eventual partnership with the U.S. Public Health Service, we were able to establish here in the United States this idea that a dedicated national health observance could really mobilize communities around prevention and health
Mm,
equity. And, of course, whenever Black folks do good things, other folks want to come and take it over and
that
attach
part.
their name to it. So eventually, National Negro Health Week helped inform National Public Health Week, which we just talked about, right?
Right.
And National Public Health Week was officially designated in 1995. And what they did with that was really broaden the focus from African American health to the nation as a whole, while still emphasizing the fact that there were inequalities and still the need for prevention and community empowerment.
I love how they're always like, hey, that's a good idea. Let's
Right.
take that over.
Let's take it. Let's take
Let's
it.
just take it over. We won't even give you credit. We'll just take it.
Exactly. And so literally we did see public health professionals start writing in professional journals, sharing the history of how National Minority Health Month came about. And it didn't start until 2002,
Wow.
but it was established because there were folks who were working in the Office of Minority Health at the Department of Health and Human Services who were really
Mhm.
championing the establishment of a national month that was focused on minority health. And so,
Wow.
fortunately, we had folks who knew the history and knew that the history needed to be told, not just within our communities, but across the board in other communities, so that we wouldn't lose sight that it really did have its roots in the movement that Booker T. Washington started.
Now remind us, what does the Office of Minority Health do?
That's such a good question. And I'll tell you why in a minute. So the Office of Minority Health, as it was established, was designed to focus all of the Department of Health and Human Services agencies on inequities in health outcomes for which
Okay.
those agencies could address them through their programs and through funding that would be
Mm,
appropriated to address those issues. And so all of the DHHS agencies had an Office of Minority Health. So the Centers for Disease Control had one, the Food
mhm.
and Drug Administration had one, the Environmental Protection Agency had one. So all of the HHS agencies had an Office of Minority Health. All of them existed for the same purpose. So most of the time, what they would do is they would have money that had been appropriated to their agency for minority health efforts. And those offices would often oversee the money that would then be funneled through their offices out to states in order
Mhm.
to implement programs. So
Okay.
usually DHHS does not implement programs themselves,
Okay.
but they pass money to state agencies in order to implement programs, in order to hire staff who oversaw minority health efforts and that kind of thing. And then the offices of minority health would also implement initiatives within their own agencies to improve the cultural competency of their staff. And
Okay.
so, for example, I used to be on a contract with one of the agencies to actually develop training for the agencies and then roll it out to their employees. So their employees would be better equipped to see things from an angle where they're taking health inequities into consideration, right?
Okay.
So they would infuse that into their day-to-day work.
Like, can you give me an example of what they did?
Okay, sure. I worked on a contract with the Food and Drug Administration through their
Okay.
Office of Minority Health, and we developed different trainings that would be considered cultural competency training. So there are individuals who inspect our food, right? When it
Mm,
comes in to the port, there are FDA staff who do food inspections. And so imagine if you are a food inspector and you have come from a community where you really didn't have any interaction with people who didn't look like you. And
right.
so what are the things that you need to know in order for you to have good interactions with the people who you might come in contact with? Because a lot of those folks at the ports might be Hispanic or they might
Ah,
be African American, right?
okay.
And so what are some of the things that you need to know in order for you to have more positive interactions with those individuals in
Okay.
the space where you might work?
Mhm.
Or you might work in tobacco programs for FDA. And so, how would you then create marketing campaigns that are more
Mm, mhm,
appealing
mhm,
to diverse audiences?
mhm,
Well, you need training. And so,
mhm.
through that Office of Minority Health, they were able to hire us to develop training so that their staff would be more culturally competent when
Okay,
they developed a campaign around
sure.
tobacco cessation. So it can look differently depending on what agency you're talking about, what population you're talking about, what health
Okay.
issue you're talking about. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, the Office of Minority Health staff across all of these agencies did a lot of phenomenal work in
Okay.
addition to overseeing the money that they would share with state agencies to implement programs and that kind of thing. So
Got you.
with this administration,
Oh gosh.
although the Office of Minority Health still exists as an office within the Department of Health and Human Services, this administration has significantly cut funding to support the office, and it has
Mm,
gutted those offices that were dedicated to what this administration sees as a DEI effort.
got you. So this would be Trump and Kennedy, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make
And
sure that people know.
And and it's hits the states as well because once that funding got cut, then that meant that states did not have money to support their minority health efforts. For example, Arkansas was one that was pretty outspoken about it. So when the federal government cut OMH funding, then they weren't getting funding, so they had to close their Office of Minority Health. Now, they still say that they're doing work to, support minority health, but many states don't have any other revenue streams to fund the work that the
Right.
federal government was funding. And so
Right.
some states, their efforts are really just not at the level where they used to be.
So I would imagine this also put a lot of African Americans out of work,
Oh, yeah,
contributing
for
to
sure.
the economic
Yeah.
issue.
Unfortunately, a lot of people who work in diversity, equity, inclusion were folks who look like us, right?
Absolutely.
And so even in the federal government, a lot of the Office of Minority Health staff were people of color. And so, yes, it put a lot of them out of work. And we talk a lot about the 300,000 Black women who are out of work right now. And a significant portion of those folks are folks who worked in federal service. Not to say that they all worked in Office of Minority Health,
No, but
jobs,
public
but
service, right, the CDC, all of
correct.
those types of
Yes.
yes, I know several
Yes.
women in particular, I mean, personally. So,
Mhm.
yes, yeah, I mean, it's impacting, and if these offices are closed or people of color are not in the public health sector, then I would imagine that health inequities are not getting reported
Correct.
anymore, even though they always tell us we get everything worse and higher and physically
Absolutely.
than everyone else.
I think you're spot on in terms of that data piece. And to go a step further from that, one of the things that this administration also did was that it told states that you are no longer required to report race and ethnicity data
Mhm,
to us.
mhm, mhm.
And that data would get shared with the feds so that the feds could report nationally what was going on in terms of health inequities. And that data is no longer readily available for us
Right.
to be able to look at it from a state by state perspective, to look at it by region of the U.S., to look at it by demographics. So, what's happening with Black people compared to Asian Americans, compared to Hispanics, compared to whites. We have lost some of our ability to do that and to be able to pull that information from the federal government like we used to.
Got you. It's interesting. Oh, this is just um unfortunate, and also, I think, a slap in the face to the work of Booker
Mm-hmm.
T. Washington, who was prophetic, if you will, in
Mm-hmm.
foreseeing that this was going to be a chronic issue, in our communities. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so okay, so it was initially National Negro Health Week. It was an 8-day observance. Was the week ever 8 days? Okay.
Mm-mm, from Sunday to Sunday. Yeah, because it
Uh,
also was an effort that really engaged churches. And so that's why it went from
okay.
Sunday to Sunday.
I like it.
That first Sunday was kind of like a mobilization day. And so the
Okay.
goal was for churches to make sure that preachers were preaching health sermons on that Sunday. And
Okay.
then it ended with churches and civic meetings gathering data and reflecting and reporting out the progress that they made. So it
Mm,
very much was an effort, an initiative that engaged churches primarily.
okay. Which has always been the undergirding,
Exactly.
support
Of the Black
of African American
community.
communities. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
shout out to the AME Church on this because I
You
don't
better
think
come
that
on.
they do enough to really promote the fact that they were early adopters in this
Mhm,
movement. And so
mhm,
Bethel AME Church out of Philadelphia was
mhm,
was pretty
mhm.
much like the first church that Booker T.
Yes.
Washington was able to get to kind of spearhead this effort. But then also Bethel AME Baltimore is also an early adopter of Booker T.
Okay.
Washington's effort. And so there's some history, some stories out there about how Bethel AME in Baltimore was highly influential in mobilizing the community around National Negro Health Week.
And it's so interesting that you would bring that up because one of the things that we learn in early AME history is that Richard Allen was very instrumental, not a physician, but very instrumental in helping with the smallpox outbreak that had occurred. And so we really have, as a Black community, always been on the forefront, as you're saying, of public health. And it is our communities that are affected the most.
The most.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. And this is why these efforts continue to be important in our
Mm-hmm.
communities. And I wish that the OMH,
Mm-hmm.
as it was, and hopefully it'll be reinstated, it would be more visible in our communities so that we would
Mm-hmm.
really understand the significance of health education, which we're using our platform to do, but also awareness and prevention and all the things. I love how you said that public health, also helps in terms of advertising. And the only thing that was running through my mind at that time is like, you mean Billy D. Williams shouldn't be advertising Colt 45?
Well, we've always had that tension, right? We want to support our Black actors when they get opportunities to have big platforms like a national ad campaign. And
Right, right,
despite the
right.
fact he was promoting Colt 45,
And there have been others along the way,
right,
but that's
right,
what
right,
came to
right.
mind.
Yes, we still are struggling with the fact in the Black community that we have lots of advertising that is pushed to our communities for all of the bad
Hmm.
things, smoking,
Absolutely.
drinking, vaping, food that is not
Right. Plain
healthy
the
for
hot
us, right?
Cheetos, right, all the
Exactly,
things.
Takis and all these things, right?
Mhm,
So lots
mhm.
of money is spent by advertisers in
Sure.
our communities, and they don't spend that money in other communities.
Yeah.
So there is definitely an inequity there, but we've always had that tension.
Okay.
There is just so much that has come out of Booker T. Washington's work that we you just don't have time to really unpack. But we definitely want to make sure that our listeners recognize that this history still matters today. And so National Minority Health Month reminds us that health equity is not a new issue. Black communities have really been doing this work for generations. But we also still
Absolutely.
have work to do, especially in light of this current administration's attack on minority health, right? We have
Yeah.
to, take a little bit more on ourselves to make sure that our
Mhm.
communities are healthy.
And fact check. Fact check what this administration is putting out.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know someone in public health, if you know someone in healthcare, period, fact check with them so that you're
Mm-hmm.
getting reliable information because we know that the internet is faulty.
Great
Um,
point. Yeah,
so
seriously. In addition to reaching out to them to get information, I'm going to put a plug in for Think Public Health. If you know
uh-oh.
a public health professional, especially with this being National Public Health Week, I'm going to encourage you to go on to the Think Public Health website at thinkpublichealth.com, order them some public health gear so that they can rock the fact that they work in public health and start conversations with people generally in the community who don't know anything about public health or what public health professionals do or how public health professionals really do improve the quality of life for every community across the
I
U.S.
love it. Absolutely. So we'll go back to Booker T's message which was, or still remains, when we invest in health, we invest in the future of our people.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to encourage our listeners to think about what one thing you can do this month to improve health in your home, your family, or your community. I want to say and like all
And
things. Tom Joyner every year had take a loved one to the doctor day.
it was in
Um,
September.
Oh, it was in September, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we need to reinstate that, and I've mentioned that before. Take yourself to the doctor, take your loved ones to the doctor.
Yeah.
And so what can you do to improve? We talk about getting your screenings, taking a walk, just increasing your mobility. If you're not going to completely change your diet, maybe you incorporate a fruit and vegetable a day to help
Mm-hmm.
improve that. Maybe if you're not going to completely quit smoking, can you cut down?
Right.
Those types of things. So, yeah.
I love it. Great closing point.
Well, I think it's time for our herbal tea.
All right, the herbal tea segment is an opportunity for us to talk about what you all are gossiping about and then offer up something beneficial to our community's collective well being. We consider it healthier gossip. So, T,
We try to make it healthier.
what are we talking about today?
So, I think everyone's talking about definitely what's trending is back and forth between Nick Cannon and Shirley from TLC and
Mm-hmm.
their political views. Nick Cannon was all the way left field.
We gonna say right field.
Right field, the outfield,
Outfield,
over
backfield.
the fence field. Oh gosh, with his comments about people being Republicans and Democrats is the
Ugh.
party of what?
Yes. And I do feel like that is the result of him not knowing his history. You know what I'm
Okay, that
saying?
part. Yeah,
Yeah. So before you get on a mic, and especially when you know you have a national platform, I'm going to need you to do a little bit of research, sir.
right. Just a little bit. And so I will say this, Nick Cannon's personal choices are always
Shame.
questionable to the public at large, but they are his personal choices. And if Nick Cannon wants to be a Republican, if Nick Cannon wants to applaud this administration, which is not
Asinine.
beneficial to Black and brown people, and all of his children are Black and brown people.
Mm-hmm.
He is a Black and brown person with a major health issue. Nick Cannon has been very vocal about he has sickle cell. And so As we talk about public health, right? We know sickle cell affects African Americans deeply,
Yes.
and sometimes they don't have the resources to get the treatment that they often need.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go to the emergency room in crisis, right, they always have to quantify and qualify the amount of pain that they're in
Correct.
to get the appropriate treatment to
Yes.
treat their pain and their illness. And so Nick Cannon doesn't have to worry about those types of things. But, or maybe because wealth doesn't always mean that you don't have a health
That's
disparity,
true.
but to use his platform, as you say, to infiltrate these myths and misinformation to the masses is just
Mm-hmm.
irresponsible. And if these are his views and this is who he wants to support, I think should keep him to itself. Or as we talk about kitchen table conversation.
Yes. And let's just be clear, we have Republican friends, so there is nothing
Absolutely.
inherently wrong with anyone being Republican. For
Right.
me, it's when you start espousing views that are not in your best interest or your
Yes.
family's best interest or your community's best interest,
Uh-huh.
then I start giving you the side eye. And so when you talk about Nick Cannon being irresponsible with his messaging, with his language, I mean, he does have like 80,000 kids. So, I mean, he's like irresponsible all the way
Right.
around. So, do we look to Nick Cannon to really be the mouthpiece for the Black community? I think not.
No, we don't look to Nick Cannon. And we're about to transition because Chili's on the hot seat too.
Yeah,
And
she is.
I think right, we're back to who do we support? Nick Cannon is not getting any of my dollars per se,
Right.
but do we revoke his black card in this cancel culture? Right,
Right.
we haven't seen nor heard from Stacey Dash in a long,
A
long
long
time.
time.
So
Yeah.
do we say that we don't support his projects anymore? And then, of course, it leads to the question of, well, Snoop is now the face of
Hello,
the
the
Olympics, right?
what the
Although
hell?
we didn't make him the face of the
No,
Olympics,
we
but
definitely did. We
and
didn't.
so and
50
so,
Cent hadn't been
as I'm saying
canceled.
that, well, he's not been canceled, right? But he has been embraced now by the otherness, and so I wonder
Mhm.
sometimes do these celebrities come out with these seemingly outrageous supports to get supported by the
Mm,
otherness to advance their careers or to divert their careers
mm.
in different specters. Um, 'Cause, yeah, Snoop now being the face of the Olympics, where you can't even smoke weed as an athlete, and
Oh
he's
my
an avid weed
gosh.
smoker. It's just a
Right.
very interesting thing. Okay, so that's interesting. You all talking about that, and then, you all are also talking about, chili, which y'all are stepping
Mhm.
on, standing with 2 10 toes down, which
On
is
her neck.
stilettos on Chili's neck.
Seriously.
So the issue I have with Chile is not necessarily that she's contributed to the Republican Party or to MAGA or whatever the case may be, that she supports all lives matter over Black Lives Matter. My issue is that she accidentally
In
reposted
quotes.
in quotes, that she accidentally in quotes, because she
Right.
admits that she reposted it, accidentally in quotes, reposted, negative commentation about Michelle Obama stating that the repost, she didn't actually make the post, but the repost, says that Michelle Obama is actually a man and that she voted as a man, in the election. Um, I don't know why the Obamas live rent free in everybody's head, and
Everybody's
they
head.
just always trying to comfort them, and they out here living their best life, minding their
Mhm.
business.
Mhm.
But so that's my issue with Chili. How you accidentally repost something, and if you accidentally reposted something, first of all, it came up in your algorithm. So what else was you looking at that it popped up in your
Right.
algorithm?
Great
That
point.
part. And then why didn't you take it down immediately? Why did people have to
Mhm.
start being like, "Oh, hell no," before you
Right.
took it down?
Well, I've heard it said that she's not very tech savvy.
Me
And so
neither.
my thing is, okay, well, if you know you ain't tech savvy, then you need to stay off of social media.
Well, that part, but I don't think
Just
tech savvy is the same thing as social media savvy.
look. if you ain't none of it, then you just need to
Okay,
back
gotcha.
up, right?
Okay.
Just don't do any of it because you about to get yourself hemmed up. And so, yeah, people are coming for chili left and right. But one of the things I saw on social media this week that I thought was a good point was the fact that people have been dragging the women who have
Mhm,
posted
mhm,
things, who have come out
mhm.
and in support of MAGA, but they have not done the same thing for the men. Their thing is, well, 50 Cent, people are still supporting him. Snoop, people are still supporting him. Nick Cannon, when do we get
Right.
to a point where the men catch the heat just as much as the women do?
Absolutely. And I do agree with that. And I think that we've done a good job of balancing. Nick Cannon
Mm-hmm.
is outfield, and this is out of pocket for Chile as well. And I'm back to what your personal preference is. That's on you. Um, but in this cancel culture, I do think that the conversation is warranted of holding men equally accountable
Mm-hmm.
as we do women. Because
Yep.
Chrisette Michelle tried to creep her way
That's
back,
right.
and she stayed. I love some Chrisette Michelle, but we haven't, she hasn't been able to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And as we said, Snoop is thriving, 50 Cent is thriving. Um, now we're back to, right, who is funding the thrivingness of these men.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that I do agree that women are treated harsher, as we talked about frequently in every aspect when it comes to critique. Then women are held to a higher standard and higher accountability, which is not right. I also think that is it James Brown? It's a man's world.
It's a man's world.
I agree. It's nothing without women, but it's still a man's world. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that we have to tread a little bit carefully, a little bit more carefully, and we're always circling back to being responsible on how we use our platforms. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Chili is not only being dragged for her spiciness, but she done added salt and pepper to the mix. Good God. Something got in here defending her, and now they want to cancel the whole tour. Like, I can't even get out
Mm-mm.
there and push it, chase waterfalls,
Right.
nothing, because don't nobody want to go to the concert anymore. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
warrant all of that. I'm asking you, like, do we not go to the? I don't know.
Yeah. So where do we feel the most impact of our decisions in our
Mm,
pocketbook,
that's true.
right? So I always say if we're serious about our advocacy, if we're serious about sending a message to people, then we need to do it with our dollars. And so no, you don't go to the concert.
So we're back to, okay, if you feel so strongly about Chili that you can't go to the tour that she's involved with, then you don't go to the Walmart. You don't go to the
Mhm.
Target.
True, true. I think some
Mm,
things are
uh-huh.
easier said than done, right? So
Sure,
you
'cause
can choose not to go to a concert. You don't have to go
right,
to a concert.
right,
You do need laundry detergent,
right,
right?
right, right,
So
right,
I do
right.
feel like there is a difference there in terms of our
Mm,
advocacy as it relates to where we purchase our household items or our groceries. But at the end of the day, it really is still about where do we spend our money. The
mhm,
Target fast, the Target boycott wouldn't have been successful if Black people as a community continue to shop there by
right.
and large, right? It was successful because Target started realizing lower profits than they
Mhm,
were accustomed to, and they had to make some serious economic decisions as a result of it. So, in that sense, it was effective because we were showing up with our dollars. A concert is the same way. If you really feel very strongly about something, then you don't show up. I think the same is true when we're thinking about Snoop and his influence, although it plays out a little bit differently. But what if all the Black people boycotted the Olympics?
yeah, numbers,
Right?
yeah,
If we don't watch the Olympics, they're going to see those numbers reflected.
yeah,
And people are going to have to ask the question, why? And they're going to have to be
mhm,
honest about it. The same thing is true with the NFL. And part of,
mhm.
my issue and probably why I don't really follow the NFL now is when all of that stuff was happening with Colin Kaepernick,
Colin,
all of y'all was still
yes,
watching them football games every
yeah.
night
Well,
that they were on
sometimes.
TV. right?
Sometimes.
So you
Yeah.
say you were mad about Colin Kaepernick's treatment, but then you still went to football games, you still
Right.
watched football games, you still were buying football paraphernalia,
Paraphernalia.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the NFL did not feel the impact of the black dollars not being
Mm-hmm.
funneled
Mm-hmm.
into the NFL's coffers. That's why it was ineffective. You know, our outrage about what happened to Colin Kaepernick, it was ineffective because we didn't show up where it really mattered.
Right. Right. I agree with you. There's a strong contrast between entertainment and our daily necessities. And where I was subliminally going with that is that we are quick to take the dollars out of Black people's pockets, right? As
Mhm.
entertainers, we're quick to take the
Mhm.
dollars out of that, but we're not quick to take our dollars out of Fortune
Mhm.
500
That's
companies,
true.
including the NFL.
Mhm.
And so we can't boycott everything, right? But I do think that
Well, we
we do
could.
need well,
We
we could
could. It would make
where we
our
gonna get our
lives
laundry detergent?
we would have to change up things significantly. But I mean, when
Mhm.
we think about the bus boycott in Montgomery,
They
right?
walked.
They only had one bus company, right?
Mhm.
And so if you
Mhm.
didn't take the bus, if you didn't have a car, a lot of people did not have cars during that
They
time.
walked.
People
Yeah.
sacrificed.
Yeah.
They walked. They said, you know what? I'm just going to have to get up early so that I
Yeah.
can get to work on time. And then the community mobilized and was like, well, wait a minute. The Black folks who got cars, we're going to make sure that you get to work on time
Right.
so
Right.
that you
That's
don't
true.
have to walk, right?
Yeah.
But in every action, in every decision that we are going to stand up for ourselves, it comes with sacrifice.
You're
And I
right.
think that we
And
have
sacrifice
gotten
is inconvenient.
and sacrifice is inconvenient, and we are
Yeah.
not willing to be inconvenienced. And so
Mm.
when it comes to
Mhm.
us finding other places to get our food, other
Mhm.
places, like I go to, fortunately, you know, where we live, we have an international farmers market, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I
Mhm.
can go buy everything that I need to eat for the
Yeah.
week at the
Yeah.
farmers market.
Mhm.
And I don't have to go to Walmart. I don't have to go to any other stores, right, that
Yeah.
aren't doing right by the Black community. I'm fortunate in my community that I
Right.
can do
Everybody
that.
doesn't have
Everybody
those
doesn't have that.
options. Absolutely.
But even if you don't have that option in your community, what could you do?
Yeah.
There's something
I
that you
agree
could
with you.
do, right?
Sure.
But it requires you to be inconvenienced. And
Absolutely. You're right.
sometimes we have to choose doing the right thing over convenience
Okay.
and figure it
Gotcha.
out. We just got to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, I figured out. I like it. You're right. Ooh, chill. What else we gonna
Yeah.
talk about today in the tea?
Brandy getting back with her ex?
Oh, well, we can do it. This seems
Mm,
to be booed up season. It ain't even cuffing season, but
nope.
people getting booed up. Yes.
Yeah.
So congratulations on for Brandy on getting her star on the Walk of Fame. Yay.
Yes.
It's
Kudos,
I think
Brandy.
that one is well deserved. Sometimes I'm like, they just giving them out to anybody. But Brandy has been in the entertainment business since she was a child.
Right.
And she's middle aged now.
Like us.
And yeah, like us. That's what I was really thinking about. Like, dang. I was sitting in my room.
That's right.
Our own rooms, right? So, I definitely think that is well deserved. And it was reported that at the star ceremony that it looked like she had gotten back together with hate to say it this way, but this is culturally, well, her baby daddy.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so they call it now circling the block. And
Circling the block, which I had never heard that term
you've
before.
never
What?
heard that term?
No, that
Girl,
was new
because you've
for
been working
me.
on public health instead of in the public streets.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, so circling on the block in case other people are like Ebony, and just now hearing that term is when you get back with one of your exes.
Mhm.
And so are
I
there
ain't mad at her though. He
let's talk
cute.
about health. Well, he is cute. I was like, was he always that fine? I think he grew into his fineness. And so, I wonder, I mean, I think that we're hearing a lot more about that. I would say a lot of our demographic has done that. I certainly have
Mhm.
done that. Especially if there was a sincere mutual respect and affection and
Mhm.
the breakup was caused not by abuse, let's say,
Mhm.
but by something else that happened in the relationship. Is it healthy to circle back? I hear some people say, like, no, when I'm done, I'm done. And, why go back? There was a reason you left that relationship. Why
Mhm.
go back to it?
Mhm.
You're just going to get the same thing. Is that true, right? Even Ashanti and Nelly circle the block, and they're
Right.
doing phenomenally right now. So
Mhm.
it appears. So what do you think
Right.
about that?
The first thing that came to mind for me is I'm not the same person today that I was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Right. So if you meet somebody in a season where you're not ready for the
Mm-hmm.
relationship, they're not ready for the relationship, then 20 years go by, you may be ready for that relationship
Mm-hmm.
with that person because
Mm-hmm.
you've grown, you've matured, you've learned some things. And I think one of the things that with time and having been in other relationships, gone through things in other relationships that you might have been in, you also learn some really important things about what it means to be in
Sure.
relationship,
Sure.
right? So
Sure.
I'm not the same communicator today that I
Mm-hmm.
was 20 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have the same, and I'll just be just
Patience.
very transparent, patience, but I don't even have the same respect for men that I had when I was
Mm-hmm.
younger. So when I was younger, I didn't necessarily respect men. Whereas now that I have a few more years on me, I respect them more
Yeah. Yeah.
today. And so just the fact of me respecting them more means that I move differently. I say things differently. I
Mhm,
process things
mhm,
differently.
mhm.
So yeah, there are some things that you learn after, you've been through life that
Yeah.
maybe allows you to be a better person in a relationship. And so why not? I mean,
Okay. I
obviously there
totally
wasn't
agree
anything
with you.
major that happened to cause
Right.
them to
Well, it
break
was
up.
major at that time, right? But
Right.
like you
But
said,
you
we're
know
not
the
the
things that
same
you think are
people.
major when you're younger.
Right, you're right, or the things
You
that we're
look back
willing to
and be like,
forgive, right, are
right.
different, and,
Mhm.
as I say frequently as a single woman, it's scary and hard out in these streets, so,
Yeah.
if you are familiar with someone and feel safe with them, then, yeah, that might be an
Mhm.
option, to
Mhm.
go back to, something that was safe and familiar, and like you said, now we can address what happened in the past, what did
Mhm.
not work, and move forward. So I'm for circling the block. Now, I will put a disclaimer.
What's your
If
disclaimer?
you circling the block and you want something different or a different outcome than what it was before, I think that both parties need to be honest about what their intentions are.
For sure.
And we're not gonna waste 20 years on this again.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what
Mhm.
is a plan? Okay, so we're gonna, see if this can work, and then what is the plan if it is working,
Right.
versus just being in a situation where we're wasting time and now I wasted time twice. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I've been in a scenario where I've wasted time twice. But I will say one of the things that happened, and there were two relationships that I circled the block, if you will, 20 years later, but I was still being held accountable for the things that I did 20 years ago.
Mm.
And it's like, well, you're holding me accountable for 18-year-old Tanisha. You know what I
Right.
mean? Monday
That's
I'll be
right.
48. You can't, I can
Mhm.
apologize, but I made the decisions I made. I reacted the way I did as a
'Cause
as
you
a
were a
child or as a
child.
young adult, right?
Right.
Not a mature adult, not a middle-aged adult. And so
Mhm.
you can't let that go.
There's no health for the
We can't
relationship.
there's no health for relationships. There's no safety for the relationship because you bring
Mhm.
up that 20 years ago, come
Mhm.
on, man. 30 years ago, maybe. Oh
Right.
God.
Right. And the
Oh,
things you could bring up from 20, 30 years ago.
right. The things I could bring up, that is the issue. So, right, are we healed to individuals at this juncture? Which
Mm.
is a question we should be asking ourselves when we get in a relationship, period. Are
Anyway.
we healed? Are we healed individuals before we get into relationships? So
Yeah.
good
Great point.
points. Good points.
Awesome.
All right. Well, that is our episode for today.
Yeah. So if this conversation helped you, please like it and share it with someone you love and make sure that you are subscribing so that you get those notifications once the podcast drops so that you don't
Yes.
miss an episode.
And somebody asked me about when are we going to do Life More Abundantly After Dark? Great question.
Great
And the answer
question.
is what, Ebony?
That all depends on you all.
It
So
depends on you.
when we get to 100 subscribers on
100.
any platform that you
Any.
listen to your podcast, then we will commit to doing a Life More Abundantly After Dark episode. So
That's
it's all
all
on
I'm
y'all.
saying. It's on you. It's on
Mhm.
you. If you subscribe, if you
Mhm.
like, share, and subscribe, that's on you.
Right. And we have
So-
lots of material
oh,
for that
goodness. That might be an
episode.
extended episode. So I
Yeah,
think it's going
probably
to be
so.
good. I think it's going to be
It
good.
will be
Okay.
great. Yes. All right.
Well,
So, all right, y'all. Until next week,
enjoy life.
and life more abundantly.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Can I go back?